Hi everyone, it's Tess from teachwithtess.com and here today on my channel where we talk about Wales English, ESL teaching online and of course working from home. I have decided to concentrate this week's video on something that I have been contemplating for a while. So I've now been coaching and referring and helping people get into Wales since probably about February, March. Doing it seriously, I would say since May to June. And since then I think I've helped 60 people get jobs at Wales English. And that has entailed a lot of time spent obviously going through people's CVs, resumes, but also coaching them one-to-one for the demo class. So I thought today's video would be all about, or could be all about, how to get your CV spot on and do everything you can to give yourself the best possible chance of getting through your demo class. So this is sort of like an FAQ type video. I'm going to concentrate first on the resumes, stroke CVs, if you're English like me, and I will go through my top pieces of advice for the CV, and then I will do exactly the same for the demo class. So stay tuned. First, what to do and sort of what not to do for the CV. Okay, let's go. So I've coached, I don't know, I've probably seen about over 100 CVs of people who've wanted to apply. For each one, I will read through it, go through it, and send back ideas and advice and suggestions of what to tweak. So this is what Wales really wants to see in a CV. First of all, please keep them concise. They should really be no longer than 2 pages. 1 is wonderful, 2 is fine. 3, no, definitely not. So make sure they are concise. Write in a concise manner as well. Make sure that the sentences are short and to the point. Second thing I'd say is make sure it's relevant. How many CVs have I seen? Sorry, I'm using the word CVs resume. How many CVs have I seen that have maybe started with experience that's got absolutely nothing to do with teaching, or the person has written a profile or professional statement that is a very generic and potentially actually again got very little to do with teaching, because maybe they come from a different industry and the whole thing was written for that industry. So please remember that you're applying to a Chinese online teaching company. Write everything keeping that in mind. It's so important. And then you'll write something that's valuable and interesting for them, not just something that you've already written or you have drawn on from past experience that isn't necessarily the right thing for Wales. Now, the other thing that's really important, and I always advise my referrals to do, is to write a really cool, really punchy, really interesting profile statement. So that is this short paragraph that you can put at the top of your CV, and in that you should definitely put that you are a native English speaker from X country, obviously one of the 6 that we recruit from, that Wales recruit from. Make sure that you put in your degree that you have a BA or MA and a TEFL or CELTA or TEFL. Put that in there, but then follow it up with examples of how you teach. So you could potentially put in a sentence about the teaching skills or techniques you use. You could also say why you're interested in applying for Wales and tell them exactly why you think you'd be a good match for them. What can you bring to them? Don't ever forget the value of something like that. It's going to be the first thing they read. And so if you can incorporate everything that's important for them to see in that short, well-written, punchy statement, they're going to go, yep, got this, yep, got this, yep, got this. Oh, experience, tick, tick, tick. And so you've already filled a whole ton of boxes by doing a really good statement. So that's my number 3 piece of advice. Now, the other thing is, if the majority of your work experience is not in teaching, don't panic, but I would emphasize the need to really sell your teaching skills and your teaching experience, because you're applying to Wales, therefore you have got a minimum of 1 year experience because they require that. But if you've only got 1 year, or even 8-9 months or a couple of years, and then everything else, if you're old like me, and you've got 20 years doing something else and only 3 years doing teaching, then sell your teaching experience. really make a meaty little paragraph about what you do, the curriculum you teach, again, the sort of teaching techniques you use. Do you scaffold? Do you model? Do you use TPR? The type of energy you have, what sort of what sort of props you use, all these things that really illustrate the type of teacher you are. It's super important. So ensure that you concentrate on that. And then I would actually suggest splitting your CV in two. So you could put teaching experience and then you put the relevant experience there, and then put professional experience, and then underneath write something far more concise just about the industry you were in before. Now, if you were in a certain industry for 20 years, you could write something like, for 20 years or between X date and X date, I worked in the X industry and I did this, that, and the other. And you could just really write a paragraph, one paragraph that would cover 20 years of experience. Because as long as you've got those years covered, and as long as you've sort of, you say what you've done, that's fine. But if you're an engineer, it's not necessarily something that's relevant to teaching kids at Wales online. So it really is a question of ensuring that the key things they're looking for, which is teaching experience, is really pushed to the fore, and that the rest of it you keep, but you don't necessarily fill a whole page with, because you're just making a CV long for no necessary, that's really bad English, you're making your CV far longer than it needs to be. Now, I'd also add to that if you're an older person like me, tender age of 54, that means you definitely have got experience in something, somewhere. Now, for those who want to come to online teaching but don't necessarily have online teaching experience, but you've taught in bricks and mortar schools, for instance, really sell that experience. Say what you've done in those schools. Say that, again, relate the skills that you've learned from that experience to online teaching. What do you do in a classroom that is also valid for an online teaching classroom, online classroom, you know what I mean? So don't forget that. It's important. I know they look for that. They will look at experience from 10 years ago or so in bricks and mortar schools. So don't forget to add that if you're a slightly older candidate, such as myself. Now, the other thing I've often seen are people who, in the education part, will put their degree and their TEFL, but then they'll put, I'm using UK qualifications here. They put A-levels, I think these will be college certificates, that sort of thing. And then even GCSEs, which are exams that we take in the UK when we were 15, 16. Now, they are absolutely irrelevant. Again, they fill up space on your CV that doesn't need to be filled up with things like that. So don't bother putting in these sort of qualifications. And again, I would also balance it out with people who come from maybe more of a research background. I've seen several CVs from sort of PhD type level candidates, and of course they've got a load of research in there, and they've filled almost a page with research papers and this, that, and the other, and it's a huge achievement. But again, they will have a 3-page CV, a large amount of which is not actually relevant for the job that they're going for. So the key to a good CV is always remember you're applying to a Chinese company. They are online and they are wanting great teachers with experience in teaching. Everything else is sort of a bit by the by. So focus on that, make it really, really to the point and relevant, and you'll have a much better chance of getting through the screening stage. Now, the other thing about CVs that is really important to remember is who are you actually writing them for? You're writing them for a Chinese native speaker. Most of the hiring team are Chinese. So when you're writing, please bear that in mind and keep your English to the point, well written, simple to read, and again, along with that, I would say really focus on your layout. Make it as easy to read as you possibly can. I'm a bit OCD on layout, I have to say. I like things to be, when I look at a CV, I want to see the same amount of space between the bottom of a paragraph and the start of the next one, or when you're putting through all your different experiences, that it all looks the same, that the dates line up, and that but that may be just me, but I'm a bit OCD on that. And of course, something that goes without saying is please make sure there are no mistakes, because honestly, when you get a CV, or even people who send me an email, a CV with an email that has mistakes in it, you just think, come on guys, you know, you're English teachers, you want to teach English, make sure there are no mistakes. That's fundamentally important. So I can't stress that enough. Just please read through your CVs, spell check. Word is a wonderful thing. And then finally, I would say two things. One, you don't need a cover letter, because I have lots of people saying, oh, here's my cover letter, etc. You don't need a cover letter. And also make sure you've got a great photo, because Wales likes to put names to faces, and a good professional looking, not taken by a professional, but you know, when a photo where you look professional but engaging and open and warm and friendly is exactly what you need. Well lit headshot, not with lots of people in it, and then they'll know exactly what you look like, and they'll say, ah, yep, that's Suzanne, and Suzanne, here's Suzanne. So make sure you think of the photo. Very, very last part of all of this, and this is sort of linked to your CV roughly, generally. Now, please be aware that you need to prove your nationality, mainly with passports. Occasionally they accept driving licenses, but you need to have a piece of identity that is valid for a year from when you apply to Wales, because if it isn't, they won't accept it. So please bear that in mind, because I've had referrals who've fallen because of that. They've got through, they've been given a job, but they don't have the passport that's valid long enough to be accepted. So that was my last piece of advice for that. Right, now for the demo class. Let me give you some advice on that. Now, to make it clear, this is the 1v2 class I'm talking about. I don't coach the 1v6. So having got about 60 people plus, I think it is now, coached them through interview and their demo class successfully, I think I've managed to get quite a good grasp on the type of things that people could make improvements on. So let's go through them. The first thing, you get to your first slide with my family on it, and I'd use that slide to set an objective. So for instance, you could say, today we're going to talk about what families do together. And so you can talk to them, you can set an objective which will then go very nicely into, what's the name of our lesson? And you can then get this child to, or the interviewer, to read the name of the lesson. Then you go through the rest of the slide. Now, the second thing I would say about that slide is teach the blends well, because I've seen a lot of people who sort of don't really do very much with the blends, and of course that's one of the primary things of that first slide. So maybe you could have flashcards. You could use flashcards. You can use your fingers, but k, all, cool, p, all, pull, or use the cards. C says k, L says all, etc. Think about how you're going to teach it, because it is really important, because that is the main focus of those slides, of that slide even. Then the third thing I'd say is to really be aware of teacher talk time, because they really look at that. Now, the majority of people I've coached have had teacher talk time up here, student talk time down here somewhere, which is not what Wales wants. So everything that you say should be said to elicit responses and information from the student interviewer. Really bear that in mind. So for instance, there are a few tips I would say around this. Now, the first thing, please do not parrot. Now, I use this quite a lot. I do it. I've actually been evaluated fairly recently, and they said, please don't parrot. And I go, yep. So what's parroting? Well, let's say the student says, the teacher says, so what's your favorite cake? And they say, I love chocolate cake. And the teacher says, you love chocolate cake. So you're parroting, you're saying exactly what the student has just said, which immediately means that your time is up here. You don't want to do that. If you want to say something, it has to be a question, so they will then talk again. So don't parrot. Because of this sort of thing, I call it incidental language. You know, you want to try and keep it down. Because of nerves, sometimes it can be very hard to do that. So I always advise my referrers to have Where are my posts? Here we go. Look, little post-it notes. They are your friend. I would literally think about what question do I want to ask for each slide and write it down. Because when we're nervous, it's so easy to forget. So for each slide, what exactly are you trying to get from that interviewer? What do you want her to say? Well, you're wanting her to say those, or him to say those words that they're reading or that are the key words. So help, celebrate, play and laugh. That's what you're wanting. So make sure you're thinking of questions to do that. Now, the other thing I'd say about these words is, so the two of them, celebrate and laugh, you really need to teach them before getting them to read. I've seen quite a few people who've actually just said, can you read? And they haven't introduced the words at all. And especially celebrate, because coming straight after the initial slide, which has got the k sound on it, that they're blending and they're emphasizing, they then come to the s version of the C sound. So please remember, you need to use TPR. Remember that one, because you want them to engage in it. Engage with the TPR, because when you get to the last slide, you use that TPR for them to remember the words that they've learned. Now, the same thing with laugh. You know, that particular picture is a bit of a strange one, because you know, they don't look very happy. The girl's laughing a bit, but they don't look like they're really laughing. So, you know, think about angling it slightly different. Maybe you could ask, you know, how do they feel? And then from that, lead it into the word laugh. And again, use TPR, massive, great big bellyache of a laugh, and get the student interviewer to engage with you. It's super important. It's not you doing the TPR on your own. Something else that I hear a lot, people correct or repeat correct answers. It's a little bit like parroting. And again, this is just another way of increasing teacher talk time. If a student is accurate in their response, either ask a question or carry on, but don't repeat the sentence they've just said, even if you're very pleased with them. Now, this is something that I reckon 99.9% of the people I coach are guilty of. And that's because we're English speakers. But how many people have I heard say, what is the girl doing? How is she helping mum? What are they celebrating? That's the present continuous. Now, when you look at the slides, they are not in the present continuous. None of the words are in the present continuous. So I'd really advise you to, again, don't ask questions in the present continuous. What is she doing? Because the sort of mistake that could come up is something like, she is help. So do you say she is helping or she helps? So this is what I meant earlier by asking, you know, really noting down your questions so they are concise. So what does the girl do? What does the girl do? 5 words as a question. Good. The girl claps, or the girl washes dishes, or the girl, you know, but you're guiding them to the right tense for a start. So remember that you really should have questions that are going to elicit exactly what you want. Put them on the post-its. Top piece of advice. Another thing which is quite interesting, TPR. Now, TPR is something that, for those who come from an online teaching background anyway, they do it. But for those who are coming from bricks and mortar or who've got no online experience, it's quite a tricky one, TPR, because it's not natural. And, you know, so I'd never used TPR before I'd started teaching online. And so I was watching all these videos going, TPR, TPR, TPR. But I often see people who either, 2 camps really. One, there are those who come in and they have TPR for every single word that they use, and it's overkill, and they get so confused with it that they forget to do other things like annotate or whatever, or the pacing's off. So there's either the overkill TPR people, or you get those who hardly use any. So obviously you're trying to find a sort of happy medium, and I would say the essential TPR is when you're teaching them the words like celebrate, celebrate, celebrate. So you've got those difficult words, that's a good one, that's a good one. The other thing to use, of course, is when you're teaching that word, celebrate, woohoo, happy dance, or whatever it is that you do. That one's an important TPR to use, as is, you could always use playing, for the first page. Sorry, I'm about to knock over my water bottle. Better not do that. And the last one, laugh, of course. Big belly laugh. Those are important because the words are not that easy. Play, most people know. Help, most of the children will know, this age group. So that is really important. TPR, try and get a balance. Just be confident in what you're using and use it consistently. I think that's really, really important, because if you change your TPR for each word, it doesn't really make any sense. Keep to the time. You have 10 minutes. Most of my candidates can do the class in 10 minutes, because actually those 4 slides now are very, very doable in 10 minutes. But the most important thing is to ask extension questions. Make sure you connect it to them, the students' lives, because they look for that. Correct properly, because so many people miss that. I will make a mistake when I coach. The interviewer makes mistakes when they interview, and they expect you to correct that. Now, you can either do it with he is, no, or he plays rather than he is play, or you can also do things like it is playing or it is playing. Which one? And then you could show them that way of correction. But whatever you do, listen out for it and correct, because they absolutely are looking for this. And you'll get dinged if you don't do it. And then I think the very last piece of advice I would give to you is, whoever your interviewer is, make them laugh. Have fun. Remember, they will do these every day, all day long. Stand out, make them help them enjoy your lesson. Be exactly as you would be with a 6-year-old, because you're teaching a 6-year-old with basic reading skills for this. So just be yourself, just laugh, have fun, make them laugh, and teach the best lesson you can. And if you do all that, I'll see you at Wales very soon, because you'll be through. Okay, so I really hope that this video has been helpful. Again, as always, if you have any questions at all, put them in the comments below. I'd be happy to answer you. If you want to apply to Wales, my referral link is below, but I always suggest sending your CV over so I can have a look for it. But hopefully this video will have given you some really useful pointers. So by the time that you've got your video, by the time you've sent me your CV, it'll be pretty much perfect, and your demo class will be nailed. So there we go. I'll see you next week for another video. Thanks so much. Bye.